This is the future. Evolution. This is the future. Evolution. This is the future.
Hey guys, how's it going? Matt from Foulball Productions here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're doing well because I'm doing phenomenally. Thank you very much. This is the 54th episode of the MFer Podcast, and I thank you very much for joining me. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be queer. Glad to have a good time on the air, on YouTube with you fine people. With you fine people. It's been a pretty crazy week. I got to be completely honest. It has been a little wild. Your boy had a really nice Thanksgiving with a friend, because I'm marooned from my family. All my family lives back in New Jersey, and I, am here all alone without anyone to love me. But I had a good time with a buddy of mine. Had a nice Thanksgiving, got pretty drunk. Pretty holiday toasted. Ate a lot of food, as one does on Thanksgiving. But it was a good time. It was fun. It was a fun afternoon, a fun day. I baked my bread, as I do, because it's like my gift that I bring for everyone, and it's a crowd pleaser. Everyone likes it. Because most bread here in the United States isn't the best. But that's okay. I'm going to change people's perspective one loaf at a time. One loaf at a time. Hello, y'all. What's going on? The big ship. Late and gay. I mean, we're talking like 40 seconds I was late. 40 seconds. Come on. Give me a break. Give me a break. Hello, Zax. Good to see you. Ascension Dildo. It's the first 4 minutes. I just can't put that up. Not yet, okay? Got to get past the monetization window or whatever. Man, I really hope, honestly, man, if anything comes out of this Trump presidency, I just hope he guts these social media companies so we can just go back to having real conversations and say wild stuff on the internet. I hate that I have to, live up to some Silicon Valley twerp's, point of view of what's acceptable to say, man. Just stop, The market will decide if the things I'm saying are offensive, and who gives a shit? I want that. I want them gutted, I want to go back to the way things were back in 2010 YouTube, or there was wild stuff there, Let's get back to that. Anyway, good to see you, sir. Zach's good to see you, buddy. Josh McDonald, hello. Did somebody say gay? Somebody did say queer. And we're here. So good to see you, sir. Hello. So yeah, it's been Red Shirt. Hello, sir. I've not seen you in some time. Nice to see you in the chat. Very lovely. All right, anyway. It's so today I I'll lay it all out. I have kind of a unique episode idea. I want to kind of discuss someone that I've looked up to and I really care about, or I care about what he puts out. James Lindsay in the title. And I want to discuss it. I want to break down a video that he put out and kind of make that most of the episode. And we'll get there. But, kind of a lot's happened recently, and I feel like I have to address some of it just because, oh my word, it's been pretty wild. I guess I'll start with the big story of today. Once again, playing the YouTube censors. We'll get in the spicier stuff in a moment, or the zesty, if you will. But Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, of all of his crimes. Very big story today. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if you happen to see that literally everywhere you go. But big story. Big story. The big guy with the big pardon. Big guy with the big pardon. Hello, Ruben, Parrot Head, Low Spec. Look at this community. You guys are the best. So big guy with the big pardon, and Hunter Biden goes free. Now, I'm not surprised. I'm not even really angry about it. I think it's very justified that everyone's dunking on the Biden administration and Democrats and the left in general. I think that's great. Hello, Cotton Ministries. Good to see you, sir. What a good father. Indeed, Sentient Dildo. I think, obviously, this is the type of thing you have to take heat for. You have to. You can't say no one's above the law and then pardon your son from, numerous felonies and then not get dunked on. You got to get dunked on. That's part of the game there, I think. But personally, obviously, this was always going to happen. And if it didn't happen, if, whatever regime, the regime got back into office, they were going to make it work. This was never going to be a real situation. It's never going to be a real case. And quite honestly, who really expected it to be? You're the son of the sitting president and you're going to get in trouble? Probably not. Probably not. A lot of people in positions of power have done much worse in the past and totally skated. So I could never imagine seeing that actually go down. The thing I think is really interesting, well, the thought that I had, and then I'll show you a thought that Dave Smith had, which I thought was really interesting. The thought I had was, and the reason I bring this up, I'm not trying to be that guy, but the reason I bring this up is because there's been a lot of Trump, he pardoned all these guys with all these felonies. Bleh. And it's slightly different situation, manufactured lawfare. Literally using the legal system against their political enemies, but okay. I'll give you that. But let's just picture this. Let's just imagine a world where Donald Trump Jr. is a crackhead with illegal guns, prostitutes, and maybe more that, pretty nefarious rumors, and then gets arrested, and then Donald Trump pardons him. Let's just take a moment mentally to imagine the landscape in the media if that were to go down. It would be a bigger story than January 6th. It's all we'd hear about. I don't, till media didn't exist. This would be the story of the goddamn century. They'd make it like Watergate. But all they can say is, Trump did it. It's just, I know there's very little to be gained in pointing out that the left, the Democratic Party, the establishment, whatever you want to call it in this country, is hypocritical. But if you could just picture that, if you could just use your mind to imagine what that would look like. Yeah. I don't think they would be wishy-washy, pointing fingers. Oh, well, Biden administration, Kamala Harris administration, they did something. No. It would be the crime of the millennium. And that's what bugs me about the whole thing. I don't even really care. Hunter Biden skated for those crimes. I mean, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. It's a lot. It's a lot of felonies, and he filmed them all. There's a lot of evidence. It's not even like you didn't really need to piece together the case. You didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to book this one. He filmed it for you and gave you all the evidence. So, I don't know. That's a little different. But the thing is too, additionally, like as like there's a lot of the crimes, firearm crimes, which if you're lots of different other people taken very seriously, but there's all the other stuff that makes me far more intrigued into what Hunter Biden was up to, and that's the big guy stuff, right? That's the Ukraine stuff. That's where I feel like there needs to be a much more thorough investigation, and now most likely that won't happen. And probably I think someone was saying like I think it was Razor Fist was saying that Joe Biden was protecting Joe Biden, and I could see that. I could 100% see that. Grab your crack pipes, we're gonna party. Woo! Woo-hoo-hoo! I met Hunter Biden one day. Very brief. I was bartending at a bar in Beverly Hills, and he came in with this chick. He was actually quite charming. He was really nice. I didn't want to like him, but he was. And the girls there that I was working with were kind of into it. They sort of they liked the idea that it was Joe Biden's son. They were into it. It was also 2017, probably 2018, kind of peak Trump hysteria. So, the old regime, very much into it. But that's all. There's not really much of a story there, just that I crossed paths with him one time. Now here, this is not my take, so I'd like to preface that very clearly. And that's going to happen quite a bit today because I've been reading and listening to a lot of different things today, over the weekend. Dave Smith, part of the Problem Podcast, libertarian, comedian, great guy, insightful, cultural analyst, political analyst, if you will. He was talking about the whole Hunter Biden thing and the whole Joe Biden thing. And the thing that he points out, which I think was really wise, is that Joe Biden in the 80s and 90s was a type of guy who, was severely criminalizing people for petty drug possession, victimless crimes for years. One of the reasons why there's things like mandatory sentences for drug possession crimes and stuff like that. And so you did that. You built a lot of your notoriety and your career on the backs of said legislation. And then when it's your son, scot-free. Completely pardoned, right? I mean, can anything be done? Can he get community service? You know what I mean? Can the guy who never saw a felony he didn't like to film get community service? Can there be some kind of restitution? That is not my point. That was Dave Smith's point, but brilliant, so smart, so sharp. It's that's really the issue here. It's no one really kind of expects kids of privilege to pay the same prices that everyone else does. It doesn't make it right. It just makes it is what it is. But when you're the guy with this kind of hard scrabble, petty drug possession legislation, and when it's your son, you're like, yeah, I don't care. He's going free. It's okay. That's pretty dastardly, pretty nefarious, I'd say. And I think really should be more of the story. But, you know how the stories go. Alrighty. Would you say your son's dildo? I did crack with Hunter Biden, and this is my story. That would be a sick story, dude. Bro, if while I was working there, Hunter Biden said, let's go to this hotel and smoke crack, best believe I would have smoked crack with Hunter Biden. I've never smoked crack, but the opportunity to do it with a president's, well, I guess he wasn't the president at the time, but a vice president's son? Come on. First of all, it's going to be fun. That's not all we're going to do. All right? I'm not saying gay shit. I'm just saying there'll probably be hookers and parties and, VIP service. This is Beverly Hills. I think I would have, given the opportunity, smoked crack with Hunter Biden. I do think one time I accidentally smoked crack. I know how that sounds, but I do think one time I accidentally smoked crack. So I was leaving a bar in New York City, back when I lived there in my early 20s. And I was walking home, pretty toasted. It was like 3, 4 in the morning. And I lived in the Lower East Side at the time. Now, the Lower East Side's an interesting neighborhood because it's kind of like, there's all like the wealthy kind of yuppie types and the artsy types. And there's also kind of like the hood types because the neighborhood itself is, a lot of Section 8 housing, a lot of like government housing. So it's a mixed bag. I'm walking home. I don't remember if I started talking to these kids or if they started talking to me or whatever, but strike up a conversation. They're all sitting on a stoop, smoking weed, whatever, and they're like, "You want to hit this?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And I hit it, and as I hit it, the guy goes, "That's got skis on it." I still, to this day, I'm not entirely sure what skis meant, but I will say I felt really, really weird after I hit that. Like, I was like, all right, back on my way, and I got to like outside my apartment, and the whole world was going. It was really bizarre. So I might have. It certainly wasn't with a president's son, but it might have happened. I'm not really sure. I can't verify what substance I ingested, but I'm pretty sure skis is not slang for really good weed. So maybe I did. Cotton does not recommend it, but it's pretty cool. Accidentally on purpose. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I don't know. I accidentally banged a tranny. Accidentally. I was shocked at the end of that when she pulled out her penis. God, for 6 hours, I didn't even notice. Crazy. We not just gonna smoke crack sounded gay. I know. You know what I was trying to say, low spec. It means jizz. I fucking hope not. Hope I didn't smoke jizz. That's PCP. Oh, that actually makes more sense, actually. Because I didn't feel really like energetic, which I imagine was what happens when you smoke crack. I didn't. Is that what it is? I didn't know you like to get wet. It was PCP? Maybe it was PCP. I didn't know people still did PCP. I didn't know that was still around. So, okay. Maybe I did angel dust. I didn't know. It made me feel really weird. I didn't like it. I didn't do a whole lot of it. It wasn't fun. It was much like when I did nitrous. Didn't like that either. Not a fan. It was like alarm bells going off in my head. They're like, "That's the fun." I'm like, "That is not fun. I will not be doing that again. No, thank you." That's animal tranquilizer? Is that what that is? Is that what PCP is? I thought that's Special K. Are you sure? I think you're getting your drugs confused, Cotton Ministry. I don't think you're as streetwise as you'd have us all believe. I think you're a poser, brother. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking of gay shit, pretty wild story that potentially broke over the weekend. Now, I'm going to choose my words carefully here. Okay? I'm going to choose my words carefully here. I know Zach's in the chat. He's probably going to try to clip this, make me look like an asshole. Okay. This was hard to verify based on news sources, but it is potentially true that the streamer, the leftist, hard leftist, total prick, can't stand him, Destiny, may have sexually pleasured the hard right streamer Nick Fuentes. Okay. All right. Now, saying that out loud is utterly insane. Like, I read that on a lot of tweets this weekend, but saying it out loud is so absurdly hilarious. Like, I guess they were friends, which is weird, because that makes me feel like, like when you're a kid and you're into professional wrestling, and then you learn that, like, The Undertaker and Stone Cold don't actually hate each other, that they're friends and they're professional. And how kind of, you feel betrayed. Now, let me just fucking clarify for the goddamn record. I think both those guys are loser pieces of shit. I want nothing to do with them. Well before it turned out maybe they bang each other or whatever. That I don't care if that's all they do. I would still they are they're the worst. Both of them suck. I hate them. But they truly suck. They truly suck. But it does seem a little odd that they're friends, right? You'd think that people on that opposite ends of the spectrum wouldn't be buddies. And then it's like I don't know. See, the thing is, I didn't want to dig too deep on this, so to speak, because I felt like if I dug too deep, excuse me, on social media, there's a good chance I might come across it. And boy, oh boy, did I not want to do that. I really, really did not want to do that. So the only research I did was like in news sources, right? Just for the sake of my own fucking innocence. And there's only the one news source. It was all over social media. I can't verify it for sure. What I will verify is I love it. And I want it to be true. I want those two insufferable little beta male tool bags to be the laughing stock of the internet and be gay together. I think that rules, and I think that effectively just neutralizes both of them into obscurity, and who gives a shit? Not there's anything wrong with being gay, Josh, or anyone who might be offended by that take. That's certainly not my take. I don't care that if Destiny was always just a gay guy, I still would hate him, but it had nothing to do with his gayness. He's just, I tweeted this. I was like, I don't hate Destiny because he sucked cocks. I hate Destiny because he's a cocksucker. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like him. He's a tool. He's a snarky, condescending little bitch who thinks he has all the answers. He's obnoxious. And Nick Fuentes is the same way. They're actually a match made in heaven. But they're really obnoxious and get entirely too much press as far as I'm concerned. And I guess now I'm contributing to that. But it is supremely hilarious. It's kind of like Hitler and Stalin banging. You know what I mean? Like the two polar opposites going at it. It's it's not something that I would have ever predicted would, be something that I would be reading about or talking about like in a sincere way. It'd be something that like you'd make fun of someone for, right? Or, you'd make a disparaging meme about either one of them, really. But the fact that it may have actually happened is what the fuck, dude? Pretty wild. Pretty wild. So I think I don't know. I think that's one of just the craziest stories. I don't really have anything to add other than I think they're both pukes and I hated them. My hatred for them did not change based on their dick sucking or lack thereof. They're both just tools. Lame, annoying, obnoxious mouthpieces and are ineffectual and should no longer be listened to. Should have really never been listened to, but I'd say from now on. Hassan keeps getting stuck in the dryer. It's kind of annoying that Hassan's jacked. I don't like that. Obviously, that doesn't make him more likable or listen toable, but it does annoy me. Cotton hates gays. What of it? All right. I guess that's your, why do you hate gays, Matt? Prove you don't hate gays, Matt. That's homophobic. What the fuck? I am not. That is an absurd suggestion. I'm half a fag. All right, demonetized. Pretty sure there was a video. Josh was thoroughly unimpressed with Destiny's efforts, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, God. He's getting rated, too, like his ability. Oh, man, that's too much. It's funnier to talk about. It's not funny to picture. It's like, I'm not into it. Everybody knows Fuentes is a gay boy. That is a funny thing, too, right? He's just such a puke. To me, like, I don't know, like maybe never mind. That's a stupid thought, but he's just awful. Damn, you are gay, Matt. Who gives a fuck about Hassan's physique? You don't notice when dudes are jacked? You can't, like, you don't look at, like a professional wrestler or like a Redditor and notice any physical difference between the two? You don't notice, like, when a guy is jacked? Like, you don't even see it? You're just like, you're so straight, you don't even notice when a dude's got muscles or a physique? I guess I'm just not as straight as you, Sentient Dodo. I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess why would that piss me off? I'm just kidding. Because it'd just be easier to hate him. It's just a joke, dude. Just don't take it seriously. Just kidding. Just a joke. Just poking fun. Because it's like, you don't want him to have any positive attributes because he's such a hateable tool. That's all. That's it. What are we making a big deal about Hassan being jacked for? Who cares? Fuck Hassan. Hassan Piker. Hassan. Don't say that. All right. Okay. So let me get into the meat of what I actually want to talk about, so to speak. So the whole point of today's show, the reason why I want to do it is because I have been a fan of James Lindsay for a long time. You know what? I will not let you derail me. Dildo. All right. I've been a fan of James Lindsay for a long time. I think he's a really influential guy to me. I think he's done a lot of great work. I think, the thing he broke, publicly with was the grievance studies, right? Where he took passages from Mein Kampf and then replaced Jew with straight white man and then had that published by, collegiate journals. Really illustrating just how biased and ideological and, nefarious all that sort of those institutions are. Huge. That's awesome. He did some great early Rogans, like when Rogan was really starting to get into the mainstream and Jordan Peterson was really popping off. Did a lot of great stuff. And then he wrote some great books, some of which I've read. He wrote Cynical Theories, which I still think is a terrific book, especially if it's not really as mystifying now, but a few years back when this was all really popping off and everything was turning gay and woke and you're like, what is all this? And it just was kind of so overwhelming. It took that book for me to really understand the roots of it and why it was so ubiquitous and why it seemed to be everywhere all at once. And I thought it was a great handbook to understanding where all that shit came from. He also wrote another book called How to Have Impossible Conversations, which I think is a really valuable tool, like a resource, like a guidebook on how to have conversations with people that kind of fundamentally disagree with you, or how to navigate those situations. He does illustrate certain potential avenues where it's not worth it. You literally cannot get through to this person. They're a true zealot to that point of view, and no evidence could be provided for them to be swayed. So you don't bother. But I do think the book is a really valuable resource. Now, granted, both these books were co-written by him, but I thought they're fascinating. He did another one called, I think it's called Critical Race Theory is Woke Marxism or something to that degree, or Race Marxism, or some organization of those words, and basically explain what critical race theory is. The kind of thesis is that everything I don't control is racist. Now, I listened to maybe a third of it, and I didn't really feel that it was necessary that it was so long and thorough and detailed. I feel like he could have covered it in a much less time, and he sort of was exhaustive about it, which I guess him being an academic is kind of the thing that he would do. But for me as a resource or something I would recommend to someone, a little long-winded and a little unnecessary. But, that was what he was doing. It certainly wasn't to me offensive. I didn't check any of his sources or anything like that, but it just seemed all right, I feel like I got it, and I moved on. But, the reason I'm saying all that is because I have been a fan of James Lindsay for a while. And as Sentient Dildo points out, Lindsay going off the deep end is incredibly hilarious. Now, it's, he says, considering how he is on Twitter, that's a hilarious book title. Okay, so he does appear to be going off the deep end recently, and I was perplexed by it. I've listened to his podcast. I've listened to a lot of his podcast appearances. He always seems very salient and well-researched and sort of thorough and put together on all his points of view and all the reasons he says the things that he says. So for me, I never really thought of it as something like, it's like Jordan Peterson definitely has gotten a little weirder, I'd say, and a little bit more, I don't know, spiritual, ethereal, talks about different stuff. But I don't feel like, I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. That's just not for me. It's like, or it's not why I was a fan to begin with, right? It's just sort of, it feels like his biggest purpose for me was, exhausted. And, if you want to consume him for those other reasons, that's terrific. It's just not really for me. But I don't feel like he betrayed himself too much. This whole thing with James Lindsay tweeting about the woke right constantly blow my mind. I honestly didn't get it. And it was so constant. I was seeing it on my timeline all the time. It's like I follow him. Like I look at his stuff. It's coming up all the time. And I'm like, what the fuck is with this woke right? So I tried to start to piece together what exactly he was talking about. And I think I seem to notice, like, once in the lead up to the election, and especially when like Twitter became like very more so, it's essentially like a right-wing platform, right? I mean, it's like, or you could argue that it is, or there's a very heavy right-wing presence. There was a lot of like, also regards like, there's a lot of like Christ is King stuff, Christian nationalism, MAGA, Christianity, white national, like it was kind of a lot of that. Now, I don't really ever give credence to stuff like that. It's just kind of like, all right, I mean, those are, people just popping off. That guy drives a truck, whatever. He can say whatever he wants. It doesn't mean there's any kind of a consensus out there. It's just people who most likely have been kind of being vilified and had their voices silenced for, 10 years or whatever. And now they're just saying the most extreme version of what they think, because now they finally can. Now, do I think that's valuable? No. Do I think it's virtuous? No. There's a lot of genuinely racist stuff on Twitter that I do not think is helping your side or discourse at all. And if you want to pop that stuff off, I think ultimately you hurt the argument far more than you help it. But do whatever you want. I can't control you, and I'm pro free speech, so, but I think you're kind of an asshole for posting stuff like that. Not as some sort of race protector. It's just, you're a dick. Like, that's a dickish thing to post, and it's like, all it makes is look everyone now, anywhere near that, look like an asshole too. So, whatever. If you want to, if it's that important to you to, fine, but I think you're kind of shitty for it. Point is, I saw some of this stuff. Some of these things that were popping off. I saw some of this, extremist shit. And I was like, shut the fuck up. But it's like I filter it out. I don't even really notice it. I don't really see it. Like, I don't like get like, oh, what the hell? So I felt like I had like a grip on what James Lindsay's idea of what woke right was. That was until he described what he thought woke right was. And I was like, I have fucking no idea what you were talking about. Who does that description fit? What the hell are you even talking about? Like, I thought it was like the MAGA chuds and the people who were like so pro-Israel that human life doesn't matter and, Christ is king, and some of these things are true, but I want to break down his video. So he put out a video talking about it. He didn't put it out. Trigonometry put it out. And they clipped it to be this sort of like summed up definition of what woke right is. Now, I don't know if we're going to watch the whole thing because it is a 9-minute video, but I do kind of want to break down certain things and talk about it because it's a subject that like has really fascinated and baffled me at the same time, and that I think is really interesting and worth discussing because it Or at least I find it interesting. You know, maybe you don't, but I do, and I wanted to talk about it today. Racism is funny, and I refuse to pretend it's not. You're not going to hear any disagreements from me. I think funny racism is great. I think mean racism just sets you back. And I don't mean you. I just mean the perception of you. And I think it's like ultimately, you know, the only people you're going to attract from that are people you probably wouldn't want to be all that associated with anyway. That's just my feeling on it. I'm not trying to be a pussy here. I'm not trying to be woke. I'm just saying it's just, you know, I think you need to be clever and funny about it. Otherwise, it's just kind of dickish. And it's like, I don't know. I don't want to be friends with dickheads. You know, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I almost did. Cotton Ministries. Oh no, you're not gonna like the last rip of memes that just dropped. Well, I'll have to go check them out. I'll have to check them out afterwards and see if I'm gonna cancel Cotton Ministries. Next podcast gonna be about you, boy. I'm kidding. Okay. Okay. There was a few other things, but I think that's enough of a preamble. Let's get into it. So like I said, this is a video that Trigonometry put out, and this is their words, right? This is James Lindsay's words. They're not mine. It's not my interpretation. This is purely, you know, his point of view. So I just want to talk about it a little bit and break it down, and we'll go from there.
You and I have both used, but it'd be interesting to talk about it for a number of reasons. But first of all, what do you mean by that term? Because a lot of people are very confused about it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best term. It's more accurate I don't use the word woke too. I use it a little too casually still, generally speaking. But I've tried to be very specific when it comes to it, to use the phrase woke Marxism, as in that it's a species of Marxist thought, yada, yada, yada. So we can very easily place that on the Marxist left, right? Well, woke right, another term that might work for that is woke fascism. And just like woke Marxism is technically woke neo-Marxism, this could be called woke neo-fascism. The more syllables...
Why is it woke?
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. So there are kind of two ways to look at why it's woke. And one is kind of philosophical and one is practical. The practical side is look at how they behave. They behave exactly like the woke.
See, here's what I don't like. Right out the gate. Who's they, James? Can you point some fingers, man? Like, I watched this video, like, independent of thinking about talking about it on a stream. I just watched it because I was like, what exactly does he mean by this fucking innocuous term that doesn't make any sense? Like, and I think he's trying to use it as a slur to discredit them, but I don't think it works. I think it just confuses and muddies the whole situation in a way that you're like, what? So we're a minute in, you know, we're a tenth of the way through, more than 12% of the way through, and I still don't know what he's talking about. Who are the woke, James? Who are these woke right? Please tell me. Hello, Steph. Good to see you. Thanks for stepping on in. Oh, Ascension Dildo's already got a take. Bro, there's nothing deep about it. It's just a smear tactic, camouflage, and retarded academic waffle. They're revealing who they are. Libtards trying to gatekeep what's allowed on the right. Yeah, I don't think that's it. I see what you're saying, but I don't think that's it, because a lot of this has to do with Israel. And I would agree with you if he was like a pro-Palestine guy, but it turns out he's kind of the opposite. So that's where I'm like, what? What are you talking? Like, who are these people that you're pointing this finger at? Like, I feel like I'm pretty tapped into what the pop right is talking about, and I have never heard the things that he claims in this video. So that's why it's such a fascinating subject to study for me, because I'm like, who are you describing? And he's still not. He's still using this innocuous, amorphous they. Who's they, James? Who? I want to hear you talk about it. Additionally, he's been going back and forth with Dave Smith on Twitter, and then he's kind of being a bitch about it. Dave wants to discuss it or debate it or whatever, and he's like, I would never. It's like, why? Dave Smith's a very reasonable point of view. A fucking Donald Trump Jr. communicates with Dave Smith about like the cabinet picks. I'd say he's a relevant voice in the national conversation, man. We're just gonna ignore him. I don't know. Pretty gay. Pretty gay from you. It doesn't make you look cool at all. Big Ship. I don't believe that trigonometry are generally on point, but look like a lizard person and an inbred John Oliver. I like them. I don't agree with everything they say, but I like their conversations because I feel like they're principled, open-minded, and I value that. So and they have interesting conversations and some cool stuff. Sensibility disagrees. Matt, you're forgetting he's a new atheist, hates Christianity. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, but I don't know. I'll let James say it.
There's the targeted influence campaigns. There's the manufacturing of what the postmodernists called legitimation by parology or whatever. They create the illusion that there's massive support for this and massive distaste for that, using social media manipulations like we just talked about.
So to be fair, this is part of an hour-long interview, which I did listen to the entire thing, and I'd say with context, some of this makes a little bit more sense. But this was put out weeks ahead of the interview, so for a while, it's kind of all you had to go on. And it's like, these are James's words, but he didn't really get specific in the interview about who or how these targeted influence campaigns are going on. Like, where did you get all this magical insight that it's happening? I mean, he points out some of this stuff on Twitter. I've seen him do it, and I'm like, okay, fair. But I think if you're going to make this claim, you got to have a little bit more. You got to have some culprits, and you got to have some evidence. To say that, you know, there's this nefarious, like you can point to it when it was the woke left. It was really easy. You know, you could see all these institutions are captured. You could point it back to the collegiate institutes. You could point to Hollywood. You could point to social media in general, banning conservative. It was very easy. This is so... It sounds like a conspiracy theory to me. Like, I don't know where you're pulling any of this stuff from. And it's just, this is such a departure from how I have viewed this man for years. I don't know how to reconcile the two realities. They're so polar opposite. I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about, man? Hi, Kate. Hello, Kate J. I'm unfamiliar with you, but thanks for joining. Woke right essentially means to him white Europeans who desire to preserve one's culture as a whole. James and Konstantin Kisin doesn't like that as 90s liberals. Well, maybe. There might be some of that. I don't know. He's oddly pro-Israel, though, which contradicts that. I don't get it. I don't know what's happening.
They are highly invested in identity politics. The answer for them to leftist identity politics is a reaction identity politics or reactionary identity politics, equal and opposite, or in biblical terms, answering evil with evil, which the Bible says not to do, by the way, very specifically. And so there's this, you know.
By the way, I don't like that smug, condescending, very specifically. That reminds me of like left-wing people being like, well, actually, the Bible says this more than that. It's like, all right, James, stay on topic.
Grievance, identity, everything's bad for white Christian men, straight white Christian men. We're the oppressed minority under this. There's an ideology, and this kind of bleeds into the philosophical idea.
But James, you've authored books that illustrate that very point is a fact. I don't know about the oppressed minority, but that there's institutional powers that truly do vilify straight white Christian men. You yourself have written books that I have read that illustrate that fact. How is that some targeted campaign conspiracy theory? What the hell are you even talking about? That has been like your argument for a while. Am I missing something? Am I misinterpreting what I've read from you? Maybe you didn't use those explicit words, but it's certainly the people you've been criticizing they have picked their target. Their target is straight white Christian men. Now, to what degree they've been oppressed is arguable, but they are not like hiding or shy about sharing that that's who they think is the reason why, not just this society, by the way, the world over is bad. So is it that they say that? That this woke right, this mysterious woke right says that? Is that the problem? Because, man, then maybe you're the big cause of that. Because you've been saying pretty much that as long as I've known who you are. I honestly, like, that point baffled me. Baffled me. I was like, the institutions, the woke institutions that you still criticize, that he goes on to criticize in this very podcast for a lengthy period of time, that's their enemy. A stated enemy. Not even conjecture or speculation. That's who they say their enemy is globally. What's the problem with having the point of view that you feel persecuted when people who run a lot of the institutions have stated that's the enemy? You are being persecuted. It's not a mystery. Like I said, you could argue to the degree with which the effects of that have transpired, but it's not arguable that that's who they have chosen. What the fuck are you talking about? Sorry, it's just like, what?
But we'll get more specific with that in a second. There's this kind of belief that there's this ruling class that's erected an ideology to marginalize people like them that sounds very much like woke, except instead of saying that it's like the white people the white ruling class created white supremacy to marginalize people of color, especially black and indigenous, and their ways of knowing from getting inside, the woke right or the woke fascist side says instead that following World War II, on the back of Hitler and the idea of never again, there was erected a post-war liberal consensus. Starting in the 1940s, immediately, starting in 1945, the creation of the United Nations was part of this. The signing on to the United Nations was part of this. They assigned Bill Buckley, to having done a route to drive the true...
Okay, so once again, this is not a claim I've ever heard anyone make. Now, I'm not particularly learned or well-read, so, let's just chalk it up to there's a big possibility that I'm ignorant of this. However, if it's such an influential, targeted social media campaign driven by bots and influence and so on and so forth, how is it that it has escaped me? Wouldn't I be the target for that? I'm a straight white Christian male. I'm on social media. I follow all these right-wing accounts. Wouldn't they find me? I'm unashamedly pro-Trump. I put it in my fucking socials. I put it on my podcast. I have a fucking podcast. Now, granted, it's not the biggest podcast on the planet, but I have one, and I happen to talk about these things. So how is it they didn't find me? They suck at this, James. If that's the case, they're very bad at finding their target, which should be me, right? I'm part of that aggrieved consensus. What the fuck are you talking about? And additionally, just one other point, and it's not something I could have ever made because, once again, I'm not that learned on this subject. But Dave Smith did a whole critique about this video too, and he talked about that's actually not even bullshit. What he just said, that apparently William F. Buckley actually did state that he wanted to kick out the old guard conservatives. I can't speak to any of that. But I do find it pretty fascinating that somehow I've never heard this. Yet it's such a nefarious woke right campaign that it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed, in 40 tweets a goddamn day. You're the first person I've ever heard talk about this. I don't know where this nefarious consensus is coming from, where it exists, but he's so sure of it. Exactly. And even if that's where that's coming from, who gives a shit? So niche. That'd be like criticizing the woke left and using the black Israelites as proof. It's like, who gives a shit what they say? They have no influence. It's so irrelevant. So weird that this is like, and it's like, it's not just a few statements he made. This was so important to them that the Trigonometry put out this video, and it's got, 143,000 views in a week. This is just a solo clip, and James Lindsay tweets about this like all day, man, all day. Kate J. Dave Smith is correct. Buckley was the primary gatekeeper on the right in the 60s, 70s, 80s, basically helped solidify the power of the neocons. So, well, thank you for that information, Kate J. Thank you for joining me and helping the show. I don't know anything about any of that. I'm certainly not stating one way or the other. But I think if there's this targeted social media campaign that's trying to prop up this message, I would have heard about it. I would have heard about it. Ascension Dildo Support says, Buckley did say that publicly many times. His reasoning was that it has to be done to fight the Cold War, if I remember correctly. Sure. This all sounds like some relatively esoteric social history that is relevant to discuss, but certainly does not appear to me to be a topic that is so widespread and ubiquitous and controversial. James Lindsay needs to tackle this fight. Do you see what I'm saying?
Conservatives to the margins so that a false post-war liberal consensus conservative movement could rise up, the neocons, and hold them out. So the neocons become this kind of hegemonic force within the conservative faction that edges out so-called true conservatism and these more dangerous, so to speak, ideas like fascist ideas, like Carl Schmitt's ideas about unbound executives and friend-enemy politics and so on, that these ideas all had to be pushed to the side on the pretext that World War II or a Adolf Hitler can never rise again.
Once again, James, who the fuck is they? Give me one example of someone who said this. Point to it, because I don't know what the fuck you are talking about. And I feel like I'm pretty up on this stuff. Certainly not, like I said, not that well read in the history. Maybe it's really clear, and maybe it's like a wink, wink, nod, nod. I don't know. But who is saying it, dude? Who?
And so therefore, the true conservatives who represented conservative politics and kept at bay the beast of the left, which they say is that the right's true function is to keep at bay the left. In other words, to have a war, right versus left, with everybody in the middle, I guess, taking fire in the crossfire. But they believe that this post-war liberal consensus and the neoconservative movement literally was designed to marginalize their perspectives and to keep these other more radical right-wing ideas out of play. So this is a very woke.
Once again, I don't know anything about this. Who's a fan of the neocons? Who's a fan of George Bush? Who's a fan of Dick Cheney and, Mitch McConnell? I mean, I feel like even the MAGA is like, these guys are the ones standing in the way of actually, who is this consensus who's pro-neocon? I don't see that anywhere. I don't even see that in Fox News. Who's pro-neocon? What the fuck? Zax, I like James, but he's the kind of guy who needs the entire restaurant to know he's on keto. Radical paleo-con ideas. Such a tard. Because the thing is, I listened to this whole podcast. I listened to this entire podcast, and with the exception of this whole woke right concept, I felt like the rest of it was pretty salient. Even it does even provide extra context to kind of explain some of the things he's talking about. I'm like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. But, in this stretch, it's unlistenable. And he still is making a lot of great points. I mean, they start off this podcast basically being like, is woke dead? Right? Because there's a lot of people who are just, even Elon Musk tweeted the other day, woke's dead. And it's just that's premature thinking. It's not dead. It's certainly not in the entrenched institutions where it was born and the kind of managerial bureaucracy that exists where it thrives, right? So it's not just expunged because Trump got elected. They certainly didn't just run for the hills the last time he got elected. I don't think they're going to do it this time. So the idea that it's just is it dead is, I think, kind of an immature point of view or just a overly hopeful one. But so it was a valuable conversation. as a conversation, except for this shit, except for this insane, like, maybe it's brains like this that like can go down rabbit holes and think about stuff like, so, because he reads some crazy shit and goes down these crazy and really does piece it together. Maybe that same mind can also find all these abstract concepts and piece together a completely bullshit theory right alongside a really well supported one. I don't know, but this is truly absurd.
Woke way of thinking about the world, that there was a structural construction of the social and political and cultural environment designed to exclude people like them in order to be able to achieve certain political agendas. And now they believe that they've woken up to these ideas. Woke. They've found them again. They've read the forbidden philosophy.
Who's the they, James? Who's the they?
First Carl Schmitt, Julius Evola, James Burnham, and so on. They've read these things, and they're bringing back a true conservatism that was excluded from politics roughly since the end of World War II on the bogus pretense of preventing the rise of another fascist like Hitler or Franco or Pinochet. And so there's a very practical explanation for why they're woke, but especially their behavior. Lots of lying, lots of character attacks, lots of saying no enemies to the right. But
can you point out one goddamn example, James? I mean, we're 5 minutes in. You haven't given a name. You haven't pointed to a tweet. You haven't pointed to anything. We're just going on blind faith that this is the case based on I don't know what. I don't see what you are talking about, man, anywhere. Can you please illustrate? Can you just enlighten me? Like, I'm taking your word for this. Like, it's like, okay, who's doing that? Who? Yeah, funniest thing is Central Dildo. Funny thing is nothing he described is woke in any way, lol. That's why it's such a misuse. It's such a bad term that I think he's literally just trying to be like, it's just kind of, it's like a slur at this point, right? It's like an insult. It's like, you're a jerk. You're woke. I think it's such a, it's like a childish kind of thing, you're trying to, it's like, I'm not woke, you're woke. That's what it feels like. I don't know.
They don't actually even attack the left that's their enemy, so to speak, at all. They only attack other conservatives. Lots of power plays, lots of manipulative, speech. And then there's the philosophy.
Also, who the fuck are these right-wing people who only attack other conservatives? Like I said, I have seen a bit of people who are like these kind of, not ideas I share. It's sort of like Christ is king, like Christianity, and they're like really into it, and they will kind of go after, people they feel are kind of impure. That's what I thought he was talking about, because that sort of is a bit woke. It's sort of like there's an orthodoxy, and you either agree with it or you don't, and you're out. Like, I thought that's where he was going with this, but I don't see who that is outside of a complete fringe. So who cares what the fringe is thinking? It's almost like you're giving them more of a platform and more spotlight than they would ever gain on their own. Who cares? Let them be retarded. It doesn't matter.
Philosophical, deeper aspect. Why woke? What does woke mean? Woke up to a structural politics that marginalizes people like me, and we need to band together in solidarity, no enemies to the right, in order to be able to create.
Keep saying that. No idea where he's pulling that quote from. No enemies to the right. I don't know what he's talking about, and that also contradicts what you just said. You said all they do is attack conservatives. Why would someone whose motto is no enemies to the right only attack conservatives? Those two things cannot stand at the same time. What are you saying? I don't even know what you're saying, dude.
A powerful enough oppressed coalition to flip over the power structure by putting ourselves at the center and claiming power for ourselves. This is explicitly woke, having a critical consciousness about the way the world is organized. Tucker Carlson, for example, if you listen to Tucker, a lot of people really like Tucker. Tucker is...
We finally have a name. Halfway through this video, more than halfway through, we finally have a name. Tucker Carlson. Okay. I don't listen to a lot of... Also, yeah, powerful coalition. The guy who lost his job... It was like, went out to Twitter. He's still influential. I'm not saying he's not influential, but it's like, like whatever. Irregardless, powerful coalition's an absurd suggestion. Now, I don't listen to enough Tucker Carlson to know, so, whatever. Maybe he is saying all this stuff, but Dave Smith sure doesn't think so. He sure doesn't think so. And certainly the charges don't stick. He only critiques the right. Tucker Carlson only critiques the right. These are the charges you're leveling at him? I don't know much about Tucker Carlson, but I know that's bullshit. That's all I ever hear him is talk about the left. That's how he made his bones. What?
He's pretty critical of America. He's not doing a Howard Zinn critical America theory. Howard Zinn being the one who wrote the People's History, so the Marxist history of the United States, propaganda. He's writing a different critical history of the United States. Well, the Constitution was, not really adequate to prevent all of this. There is a post-World War II liberal consensus or world order that we're all being made subject to. Well, look at how America...
Look, man, I don't know what you're talking about necessarily, but I will say post-World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Iraq War, world policing. I don't know if those two things are connected, but there definitely was some fucking problems in management since World War II. Agree or disagree? The creation of the deep state, the potential assassination of a sitting president in JFK. Maybe they're on to something. Maybe there's some truth in some of this. You can't argue that our foreign policy alone was dog shit for 70 years. Is that not worth criticizing? You can't criticize that? You can't say that, what do we get out of all those wars? Out of all of it, an ally with South Korea is like the most significant gain. I mean, Vietnam is like a tourist haven now. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I feel like there's reasons to criticize America in the 20th century, dude. I'm someone who loves this country and wants it to thrive and be great. I'm not some leftist that thinks the entire thing is based on slavery or some gay shit. I'm saying this as someone who loves this country and wants it to be great. I can't criticize it or I'm a woke rightist? What the fuck are you talking about? Also, all this woke other stuff, the real left woke, that all came out of this country too. Granted, a lot of the philosophy started in France, but it still thrived here and spread like a disease. Can I criticize that? Am I allowed to criticize that? Or it came out of America, and if I criticize that, that's wrong. What are your arguments, dude? What the fuck?
America was involved in all of these things. America bad, America bad, America bad. Also, the UK was pretty bad too, and America bad, America bad. There's this kind of...
They are! Because of the things you talk about, James. Because of the things you criticize. These are reasonable critiques to level at these countries. You can't say any of this anymore? This is woke now? What the fuck? Who are you working for? What part of the targeted influence campaign is paying you? What?
Of constant critical negativity. You see some of these characters, I mentioned Tucker Carlson, but you see some of these characters like Stephen Wolfe, who wrote the book The Case for Christian Nationalism, has put multiple times on social media, and I don't know what he said in public talks. I've only heard one of his public talks, but you see him on social media saying more than once that he has adopted critical theory specifically for his own purposes. And
Who is this? Who's this guy I've never heard of? What's his name?
America bad, America bad. There's this kind of constant critical negativity. You see some of these characters, I mentioned Tucker Carlson, but you see some of these characters like Stephen Wolfe, who wrote the...
Does anyone know who Stephen Wolfe is? I think I've heard that name, maybe. I mean, when I Google it, fucking Johnny Sins comes up on a LinkedIn account. So, okay. There's a guy, Stephen Wolfe, who's a producer in Hollywood. I don't think that's him. Producing partner and owner of Steak Preview Entertainment. Okay, let me just say Stephen Wolf. Maybe I'm spelling it wrong. Could be that. No, I wasn't spelling it wrong. Okay. He wrote a book called The Case for Christian Nationalism 2 years ago. Okay. Someone wrote a dumb book. Okay. So what? I mean, that's the cost of the First Amendment. People are going to say dumb shit that maybe you don't agree with. I've never heard of this guy. And that doesn't mean just because I haven't heard of him, he's not influential. But James's entire point is that this woke right is such a concern because they have a targeted campaign and what do you say, a coalition with all these voices. And somehow I don't know about any of that. That's crazy. I would. I would be exposed to this, right? They would get into Rogan, or they'd get into my tweets, or they'd get to some of these people, Jordan Peterson, someone that I am in the sphere of, I would see, or I would just see the fringe tweets on Twitter, but I don't. Is this such a concern that you need to dedicate this phase of your life to fighting these people, bro? I don't even know who they are. Ascension Dildo, all these left of me tards are the same, driven by resentment over the rejected by the institutions they base their identity on. It's a reasonable description, man, because I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. I really don't. But I also think, well, maybe he'll say it in this clip. I'll remember if it's from the whole podcast or if it's this clip or not, but let's say a little bit more. It might have been from a Twitter exchange, but I'll let James talk about it.
The book, The Case for Christian Nationalism, has put multiple times on social media, and I don't know what he said in public talks. I've only heard one of his public talks, but you see him on social media saying more than once that he has adopted critical theory specifically for his own purposes and to his own ends. He was recently saying on social media, somebody sent it to me, so I have to, I guess, confirm this, but he was saying that, in fact, the critical theory he uses
this
is
guy,
not...
Okay, so I just wanted to look this up because once again, James's thesis is this is so widespread and such a targeted campaign. This guy has 26,000 followers on X. 26,000. Not 260,000, not 2.6 million, 26,000 on a platform that, as far as I can tell, is pretty much unregulated. Save, some criminal stuff. If this guy is such a problem, why is no one following his shit? I'm looking at his tweets. 300 likes. That one has 500. That's just a response to Cenk Unger. People, it's a lolcow. 100 likes. 400. I mean, obviously, it's more than I get. I'm not comparing. I'm not doing a dick measuring contest of who's more influential on social media. What I'm saying is that if this guy is such a problem, if what he's writing is so dangerous and so nefarious and he's got such bad ideas, why the fuck is no one listening to him? If this whole thing's an issue, why isn't he more popular? You've got fucking 10 times the followers this guy has. Who gives a shit what this idiot says? Obviously, no one else does. My God. Sensitive Matt, what you fail to understand is those fringe tweets you saw were all part of a grand plan to summon Zoroastrian God and usher in the new utopia for whites only. I guess so. Boy, they're good at it. They are really clandestine about it, which is pretty impressive because I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about.
The perverted version of critical theory that the left has used. It's its own more correct version of critique that goes back before the left, yada, yada. And so how do you not call the attempt to awaken a critical consciousness of the power structure that you believe has delegitimized your movement? How do you not call that woke, when woke means having awoken to a critical consciousness that there's a structural force that has delegitimized people in your political positionality? It's the exact same thing, unfortunately. It's just pushing a people in place kind of driven fascism.
I don't even want to address that one. It's just because it's like, so anyone who thinks that there's like a consensus that's actively working against them is woke. I don't know what this Stephen Wolf guy's saying, so I'm not sitting here to defend his point of view or what he's arguing. But that like foundation is just like, but then I would be guilty of this, right? Because I'd be like, well, it seems like all the institutions with their hiring practices and their and the collegiate universities and such teaching this ideology, and then kind of like it being widespread also via social media, TikTok, China's influence, all that to me adds up to there is a consensus, a sort of collective of people who do want to alienate and criticize people who they've targeted, who he says, you know, the straight white Christian, where I've seen that. I must be woke then, because I think that there's a lot of evidence to support that. I guess I'm woke, guys. I guess I'm woke. If I think that that's true, I'm woke. Good God, man. What the fuck are you talking about?
As opposed to we're going to end all oppression by becoming the oppressors communism.
It's very well explained, and that's kind of why I have been calling
Disagree,
it, even though I'm not sure it is
Disagree.
The best term, but the behavior is the same, right? It's quite obviously the same. Victimhood, cancel culture, lying about history, all of this.
Rewriting history, lying.
What? Who? Let's just not even say the woke right. Who on the right has enough influence to cancel anyone? The best you could argue is maybe Candace Owens got fired by Ben Shapiro, but she didn't go anywhere. It wasn't like how it used to be when like someone got canceled. They like couldn't have a social media account. They were fired from whatever media jobs. Basically the point was to unperson them. And so they couldn't communicate, like Alex Jones or Trump, where they were just all platforms immediately agreed that they were, you know, persona non grata. Who on the right even has the power to do that? You could make someone the enemy. You could talk shit about a guy. Okay, fine. I wouldn't deny that, but that's just talking shit. To cancel them? How do you cancel them? How do you even wield enough power to do so? Who's canceling anyone on the right? And first of all, who the fuck are you talking about? I haven't seen any of this. I don't know who that could even be attributed to. Who have they canceled? And this would behoove you, James, to point out who they canceled, because they would have to be on your side or not part of the woke right consensus, right? So who is the victim of such canceling? What the fuck are you talking about, dude? This is inane babble. Like, I can't believe, after having watched this, how much more I completely disagree, and how because I've been on this guy's side for a long time, so I assume if he's saying it, there must be some sort of substantiating evidence. There must be some reason he's saying it. This was worse. I was like, oh no, I don't agree with anything you're saying. Like I didn't know how to process this. This was bananas. Not much left, but a minute.
Thing about people digging up people's past to cancel them, it's unbelievable.
Give
one example. If it's so unbelievable, James, give one goddamn example. Just one, man. Just one. One example, please. Illustrate what you're saying. Point out. Use some evidence. Use some facts. Use some proof. Tell me. I'm a fan. I've listened to your work. I've read your work. I would be very willing to hear who the hell has been canceled by this mysterious, this fucking, Hydra. Behind the scenes in the right-wing media institutions. What the fuck? What? Oh, my God.
Have made about that I do think is valid is that they're not comparable in terms of influence and power. The woke left control for a period of time, controlled what felt like everything. The woke right isn't anywhere near that level of influence at all. And frankly, I wonder whether, having talked about it as much as you and I have, we've maybe drawn too much attention to a very small fringe. Because when we went to the Trump rally, I didn't see it. I talked to a lot of people there. I listened to all the people on stage. I didn't hear in either the statements or the response to what people were saying, the type of conversation that you see online. So it seems to me like it's a tiny fringe that's being amplified by bot farms and foreign meddling and whatever. I don't I think increasingly, I don't think of it as real, even though, as you say, there are one or two people who are very influential in American politics who have flirted with some of these.
Ooh, one or two people flirting. That's the conclusion of that. That was the conclusion of that whole thing. Now, granted, it wasn't Constantine's assertion. He has made similar claims, but it was James Lindsay's thing. I mean, really, and the period on the sentence, the sledgehammer on the anvil, was one or two people have flirted with it. Now, I will say, to James Lindsay's credit, in this whole podcast, by the end, he does start to illustrate that some of this is because, like, well, these ideas will get propped up. The more extreme right-wing views will be propped up, and then those will be more associated and be the kind of like nails in the coffin of like the MAGA movement, because they'll use these extreme fringe groups to categorize and sort of describe everyone who's on the right and the MAGA stuff and all that. That is a totally much more reasonable point. But I fail to believe that that is his thesis, because this motherfucker has been talking about this for months. And he tweets about it like 40 times a day. I'm not exaggerating, dude. Like, I feel like in the past, like, maybe week, he's chilled out. But prior to this, I was showing my buddy. Like, I remember, like, one time I just scrolled his entire timeline because I just wanted to see, like, you know, within a 24-hour, like, a time frame, how many times he had tweeted in that 24. Scroll. It was like hundreds in a day. James, man, get the fuck off the internet, dude. You know, go take a walk, bro. Go to the park, throw the ball with your dog. Like, you can't be this tapped in. Like, no wonder you think there's like this giant right-wing, woke right boogeyman out there. You never unplug. Crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Senja Dodo says, Lindsay is woke by his own standards, though. He's awakened when he was fucked over by the system. He's also been awoken to all these right-wing bot farms and all this stuff out there. Like, I just felt this was really necessary to talk about, because it's the kind of thing that's like, I feel like a lot of times he has been on like the cutting edge of, like, you know, political discussion, you know, intellectual discourse, especially in these kind of like influential like tendrils that reach far and wide. So when he starts talking about it, I give him a lot of credibility because I've listened to so much of his stuff and felt that so much of it was accurate. This, I can't even see this as other than like, yeah, there's a fringe out there who maybe thinks some crazy shit. Okay, we're going to pile on them? Who gives a shit? Don't even acknowledge them. Let them just say dumb shit. Don't take them on board. Like, don't use their ideas as anything that were a springboard, and fuck them. Whatever. Crazy, man. Absolutely nuts. There's, you know, if you anyone want further discussion about it, Dave Smith talked about it on his podcast, on Part of the Problem, which I think is a really good podcast. I think he does a lot of great stuff. I don't agree with him on everything he says, but he had this guy on, Scott Horton, who wrote this book called Provoked, which is about the Ukraine and Russia war, and how, I guess, like, you know, everyone in like NATO and America and the West like kept saying unprovoked attack. And this guy, Scott Horton, wrote a book called Provoked and illustrates exactly why it's provoked. And he's talking about it. I think there's something like 10,000 citations in the book or something like that. There's like 1 million words. Anyway, they have a really like long and frank discussion about that. America's foreign policy in the 20th century, especially from 1990 on, and just how I found it absolutely fascinating. And, you know, James Lindsay went off at Dave, basically. So that episode, that Scott Horton episode, got taken down off YouTube. I think it was just a glitch, but it definitely looked like they were being censored at the time, because they say a lot of critical stuff. And somehow James Lindsay got wind of it or tweeted from someone else, but basically said, the guy who rants about Jews on YouTube got in trouble for ranting about Jews on YouTube. Well, there's, you know, certain things are and certain things are not, or something like that. And it was just like, what? First of all, Dave's Jewish. And then Lindsay goes and says, oh, yeah, he's Jewish. Like, that's where I was like, oh, is this more about Israel? Like, I feel like this is more about the Israel-Palestine conflict because Dave Smith is super critical of Israel, the state. But he is a Jewish man. And the other guy on this show, Robbie Bernstein, is also a Jew. So it's not, I don't think it's racial. It certainly doesn't seem religious. It seems that, like, it's kind of hard to look at that and be like, no problems, perfect. You guys just keep doing what you're doing. It's complicated, man. It's very complicated. I don't have like a strong take one way or the other, but I don't think either side is wrong. It's very hard to like look at what the Palestinians are saying and be like, nah, that's okay. Whatever. Just keep killing everybody. It's like, there's it's gray, man. It's complicated, I think. Maybe you guys got more conviction about it than I do, but I just kind of look back and there's a lot of complicated shit about it. But that made me think that more of like this woke right that he claims exists, that he did not prove exists, really are just the right who are like, why the fuck are we helping Israel? Can we just let them duke it out and not give them all this money? And like, maybe he's conflating that with all the Crisis King people. I don't really know, but it confused the hell out of me. And it's something that like, if the rest of that episode wasn't so compelling and interesting, I probably would have written James Lindsay off. It is hard for me to reconcile this, especially if he continues to talk about this imaginary woke right and have all these like crazy takes to the point where you're like, I truly cannot grasp what you're talking about, even when I try. It's going to be harder to suffer for me. Maybe he'll get back on board. I do think that full episode is worth your time of trigonometry. I do think it's really interesting because when he's right, and he's well-researched and he's smart. But this whole woke right shit, I can't believe how nothing is there, how little substance is actually at the bottom of that well. He barely named anyone. Tucker Carlson. And by the way, he doesn't really elaborate on any names or anything in particular on the rest of this episode. Like this is kind of like the woke right section, and the rest of it's just kind of not really about that, except for some few contextual things and why he thinks it's important to critique this stuff. But that's almost more relevant, really, is what he should have led with why. That would be way more valuable with the rest of all this made-up nonsense. But literally, he just said Tucker Carlson and this writer that no one's ever heard of. Okay, man. I don't know. And stop being such a pussy. He, like, blocked Sargon? Why? Sargon of Akkad? That guy is, like, one of the most reasonable, thoughtful, articulate people that I could even think of. Like, he might disagree with you even vehemently, but I can't imagine he would be, like, uncivil or hostile to you. I mean, he's so British. It's like, really? You blocked him? You're arguing with Dave in this petty way, like attacking like his physical appearance, being like, you need to do push-ups. Like, I don't know what's going on with you, man. I really don't. Maybe it's just being chronically online has just fried your brain. But as someone who's a fan, bro, get it together. Get it together, because you're just going to make yourself completely irrelevant with all this fucking happy horse shit. Sencha Dildo says I should just write him off. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable considering all this stuff. But I did think this episode was good. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I almost didn't watch it, but I was like, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. I better watch it. And I ended up really liking it, but Jesus fucking Christ. Essentially, reading all that critical theory stuff and old Gnostic text finally broke his sensitive libtard mind. He can't look at anything without seeing fascism lurking in the shadows. That's hilarious, bro. That might actually be it. That might actually be it. There's nothing wrong with doing push-ups, Cotton. It's just, when you're having an intellectual debate, to point out someone's physical failings is irrelevant. That might really be it, though. I mean, who knows? I tend to think it's a little bit more like the Jordan Peterson thing, where it's just kind of like, no, we do not criticize Israel. It reads more like that to me. It reads a little bit more like that to me, because I don't know where the hell else this could be coming from. Because I don't get it. It's like to be so petty and weak with Dave Smith, who's like really well thought out and articulate and well read about these subjects. Like I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything he says or all his conclusions, but he's certainly not an idiot. And he's certainly not like weak-minded or petty. It's like everything he says is about the argument. You know, he might be wrong or might be misinterpreting or maybe he's not, well read enough or something, but I don't know. It did feel like there was a pretty dramatic, allegiance. Like people stepped in line and were like, I will fight. Whether that's, influenced James Lindsay or not, I don't know. But it looked like that to me. Sencha Dildo says he blocked Sargon because he dared criticize liberalism by implying seeds of communism were baked into its philosophy from the start. You just block him for that? It's a really good salient point. Sargon's exploration of why liberalism is flawed fundamentally is some of the best political discourse I've heard in years. It's like, it's also such an interesting conversation because like the liberalism, traditional liberalism, could never even be divorced from what the American experiment is. Because we don't share like a collective history and culture the way Great Britain does or Germany does or fucking, whatever. Pick the culture. It can't even, we can't even disseminate. Like our entire culture is so wired into classical liberalism that it's like, it's just such an interesting conversation. Let's hear him out. What, you can't, it's like, that's like so philosophical. That's like Aristotle level philosophy. It's like completely discussing the concepts, the foundation, the roots of what the West has been built on for the past few hundred years. He's criticizing it. Fucking reasonable, man. Kate J. and Sargon's point on that is absolutely correct. Look, I think it's absolutely compelling. I don't know how correct it is, but I think it's like, it tracks. It 100% tracks. And I find it really compelling, and I certainly don't find it to be like inflammatory or any type of thing you'd have to distance yourself from, or I just can't get enough of it. I'll tell you what's fucking block-worthy, James, is talking about the goddamn woke right 40 times a day on Twitter without any goddamn examples. I don't know. I hope that was interesting to y'all. I hope that you guys liked that discussion and breakdown. Maybe I'll do more stuff like that in the future because it was very compelling for me. But that was just a subject that I really felt I needed to address because I've talked about it on this show, completely ignorant of what he really thought. And when I found out what he really thought, mind fucking blown. So, hope you guys like that. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. No real plans for next week necessarily. Obviously, I'm going to do the show. I was just trying to see. Like, no guests booked yet. But I got some plans for that in the future. But, yeah, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Kate J, it was nice to meet you, as it were. Yeah. Check me out on all the platforms. Subscribe to everything. Follow me on X. Subscribe to my Instagram. Look at my sketches. Rumble. iTunes, all the stuff. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and I hope that you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next week. Same bat time. All right, have a great night.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!